Hello, good morning. How's everyone doing? My name is Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, digital chaplain, and this is my co-host.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tina Frank, and I'm a mature Christian woman who follows the teachings of Jesus Christ. And we're excited to have you all join us today. Um, you know, Topics sometimes are a little bit of a challenge for us, but I feel like this season they're coming a little more readily. And this week I kind of took the lead on this one, and we're talking about can you go to the back to the beginning to move forward? And we picked that because I think Bonnie and I have both had experiences where we've been thinking we're moving forward, but really we had to go all the way back to the beginning so that we can see some new things, experience some new things, gain some new perspectives so that we can move forward into our next season of life. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Um, I'm going to put you on the spot, Bonnie, because you just had an amazing encounter in your new home. I know you've just moved to Idaho, back to Idaho after desiring to for so long. So if you don't mind, will you share with us a little bit about this last week?
Yeah, sure. I turned 44 on Tuesday.
Yay! Happy birthday
So
again.
yay, yeah, that's awesome. And for folks you might not be able to see, but I got a hugging ring from,
Oh,
and my finger's pointing to you just by showing my ring, but
ah,
from from Tina gave me this hugging ring. She often says, I wish I could hug you because we're not in like the physical room all the time, and so it's super, super sweet. Anyway, um, uh, yeah, so I had an opportunity to do like a storytelling. That's what you wanted me to share, right?
yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly.
I had the opportunity to do a storytelling event on the topic of touch. And touch is something that's been kind of a new experience for me in my transition. There's the physical aspects, which is being on hormones, and the mental, touch comes to us in so many different forms. Um, but I started to notice a new experience with touch. And so part of the journey was to talk about, what has my experience with touch been throughout my life? And so part of that was kind of going um, back in the past, one to kind of talk about childhood. What was my experience? How did that impact um, how I experienced touch in the future, especially since there was some trauma as a young person that really just kind of took me far away from, I think, the physical aspect of touch or being present to touch. Um, and starting hormones changed that for me. I can physically be in my body more and live less in my mind, which causes me to have a new experience with it. But I think the other aspect to it was, yes, going back and kind of like looking at my experience and um, trying to see it differently or see it more fully or whatever. But the other aspect was me physically being back in Idaho. And
Mm,
so, I was in front of about, I think, originally told us they were going to be about 250 to 300 people. I don't know how many people actually were there. It was a lot. It seemed like a lot. um,
mm.
and so I was in front of these people who are all Idahoans, and people who, like look like the people I was raised around, and just people I saw growing up. And so it was really interesting, and it was really difficult. I wasn't really nervous at all the whole time to the lead up. I did a lot of writing, a lot of preparation. I was feeling really good about it. And then I got there, and then I just kind of was started noticing that I was having this just a lot more anxiety and fear and vulnerability, a little more than what I had thought. And so, um, yeah, so I mean, I think, so it was uncomfortable. I didn't feel like I spoke eloquent, and like I wasn't able to like like say what I had written down so well. But I was honest, and I was real, and I was human, and I was open about my experience with life.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I noticed, and I think this is part of like moving forward, is that, I wanted to end on the note talking about how excited I am about the future of touch and the future of, the experiences that I'm going to have. and I wasn't able to really kind of go there um, uh, fully, partially because I don't know that experience yet because it's not an experience I haven't had yet. But in
Right.
some ways, I'm still kind of working through to get to that space. You know what I mean? Like I'm still kind of scared and nervous and anxious and it's still difficult to do those sorts of things, you know? And
Yeah.
so it's good and it's great actually. I feel good about it and I'm glad that it happened and it wasn't a failure in any way. Uh,
Oh,
I'm excited for what is to come, I guess. So I don't know, I
yeah.
feel like I've
Yeah.
talked a lot already. Sarah's saying hello, saying hello.
Mhm.
Want to say
Hey,
hello?
Sarah. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So
Yes.
I just have to tell you, and I, I don't know. I think about the people that God has put in my life a lot. And when you told me originally that you felt like you wanted to move back to Idaho, I had this flashback. Oh, he's going back to the beginning
Mm,
because there's something new and exciting. And sometimes, and I know this from experience, my experience is so much different than yours, but definitely relevant and necessary for me to move forward. I've realized that things in my life kind of are circular and you get going down this road and you get to a point where you desire something that's not happening in your life. And for me, I always think, okay, where was it in my life that I've experienced that before that I
mhm.
desire it again? And so I go back. If I can go back to that moment and reassess it, then a lot of times I can gain new wisdom that I can move forward in this next season. So when you just told me before that you wanted to go back to Idaho, I had started praying that those opportunities would align, that you'd be able to come back to that space, and that you'd be able to have a new experience that is going to create a stronger foundation for you to move you forward into this next season of life. So for me to hear you share, it's like, oh, I feel like God is answering my prayers. So I just wanted to tell you that because that was encouraging for me. I'm sorry it was uncomfortable for you, but I agree with you. I think it's going to be a positive move for you to move forward and create some new opportunities for you that maybe you hadn't even considered before.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's like that intuition. I intuitively know that there's a special kind of healing and a special kind of experience that I can only get from being here. So I am eager and excited about that. And I think the other aspect is the layers of like, because I've transitioned and because I haven't been here for, 10, 12 years since I left, it's like I ran into people that I know from my past who don't know me, who haven't, met me as Bonnie Violet, or maybe they read about me like on social media or whatever. And so but they hadn't actually been in the same room with me or talked with me and so it's interesting navigating, again, that's just like another layer of just
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's just another layer of the experience that can make it seem a little bit more complicated, I think,
Hmm.
if
You
that's
just got
okay.
to embrace that complication and trust God to bring you through it. I'm learning a lot about what peace looks like in this season of
Mm,
my life. I realize that as I get more grown up, that I carry a lot more baggage, and a lot of
mm,
it's unnecessary. And so but I don't. I feel like I need it, but I really don't need it. And if
mhm.
I can just allow God to take it off of me and let go of it, I'm realizing that I'm finding new levels of peace and joy in my life.
Yeah.
So,
Do you
uh,
do
go ahead.
do you think that that you have maybe you said something about having more baggage later in life. Do you think maybe it's about because I've had a similar experience where I feel
Yeah,
like I'm more present to and aware of my baggage. My baggage was probably there all along, but
yeah, that's
like
probably true.
I don't know if maybe if your experience is as you've gotten older, you maybe have the time or like I think for me, I actually have the capacity, like I have the ability um to really unpack this baggage or to even notice that it's there and to kind of like work to let it go. Whereas I don't think I had the ability. I don't know if it's a little trite or whatever. It's that statement that God never gives you more than you can handle.
Mhm.
Um, and I do believe that sometimes I have been guarded from the full truth, or was unable to see the fullness of
Mhm.
what was happening because I wasn't able to comprehend or understand that at that time. And so I feel like as I've gotten older, it's been, you know, I've been able to kind of grab some of that baggage. But I think one of the challenges that I've had, or sometimes that I struggle with, is feeling like I get stuck in it for too long. Like,
Mhm.
how do I move? How do I move beyond? And then I think the other aspect is um, when other people aren't willing, like when other people are part of that experience, but they aren't willing or don't want to like engage with you around some of the experience or the conversation so that you can get maybe more information or things like that. And so sometimes that can feel a little frustrating because not everybody gets to a place where they can unpack some of these things or even don't see it as something that needs to be done.
Right,
And
right.
it might not be for them.
That's right. I think that's something that we need to always remember. Some of the things that I carry around as baggage aren't necessarily baggage for someone else.
Yeah.
And we need to not inflict, for lack of a better word, that on other people. Because if they are free of that or they don't have any, um, I don't want hesitation or any bondage, is maybe the word, with that, then I certainly don't want to put mine on them.
Yeah.
And that's why, for me, as a woman of faith, I I release all that under what you just said. That
Hmm.
I have peace in Jesus, and I believe that. So, and I find a lot of times when I unpack it, even if I'm unpacking it by myself, a lot of time I find that a lot of this is self-inflicted because I
Yeah.
don't know if you struggle with this, but sometimes I don't think very highly of myself.
Mm.
And even though I'm doing well and I'm thinking and doing all these things, I find that the deeper I go, I realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I had such a negative perspective of that in my life.
Yeah.
And so I need to learn to let that go. That's a baggage. But you're right. As I get older, I have eyes to see that baggage a little easier than I did when I was younger. And maybe it is because I'm not so consumed with raising children and running everyone's schedules and doing all these things. But I'm grateful that in this season, I can find new levels of peace. I can find new levels of joy. And it's freed me up to go back to the beginning
Hmm.
so that I can be better prepared for my next season in life, which I don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And as scary and exciting as that is, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Can you share maybe an experience of you um, going backwards to move forward?
Absolutely. You want a past one or a recent one? Because
Whatever's coming, to your
okay,
to your heart right now.
well, um, I'm going to go with my recent one because I'm a mature Christian woman, and when I say that, I'm sure for a lot of people they get a visual of lots of different things,
Hmm.
and that's okay. We all do that, and I realized that I don't want to be a stereotype. And when I started to look and see some of the baggage that I was carrying around, a lot of it was baggage of tradition and baggage of how I perceive myself and baggage of how other people perceived me.
Mm.
And so holding true to wanting to do something different and going back to the beginning because that's what's worked for me before, I went back to the beginning and to the church. I consider myself the church. The Bible says that because I believe in Jesus, because I want to live according to his word, that me, not the building, not the place where I go, not the guy who stands in front of me and tells me things every Sunday morning, but me, I am the church. And so I wanted to understand what that meant and why I was struggling with some of these areas. And I wanted something different. I don't know if you ever get caught up in the same old thing over and over. Well, being a mature Christian woman, I read my Bible daily, and sometimes I find myself going, "Oh, I've read this before."
Mm.
And I don't always allow myself to learn something new. So what I did was I went back to the beginning. So for me, in that context, for those of you who don't know, that would be the book of Acts. So the book of Acts is the birth of the church, according to the Bible. And so I went back and I started reading what the birth of the church looks like. And I have to tell you, one of the first things I did, because I know I'm regimented, I'm very systematic. I have already been there,
Mm.
but I wanted to go back to the beginning and gain new perspective. What new perspective can change how we see things, how we experience
Yeah.
things, how we can move in things, the people we can associate with. It all has the ability to shift. So
Yep.
what I did was I listed everything out that I thought I knew about that, and I decided I was not going to consider that when I was reading it this time.
Mm.
And so I went back to the beginning and I read all these similar passages, these passages that I was familiar with. And as those things come up, because they do, because I've been there before and you see the same
Right.
road, I said, nope, I'm not going there. I want to gain some new perspective. And I
Mm.
have to tell you, it has totally changed my view on who I am when I say that I'm a mature Christian woman.
Mm-hmm.
A totally new view as to what it means when I say that I'm the church. You know, I've gotten to a point where I don't want people to call me religious because I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
But because I go to church, I get kind of put in that category, and I've learned that that's not who I am.
Mm.
But I would never have learned that had I not decided to go back to the beginning and challenge some of those things. Now, all that stuff that I had in my mind, a lot of it is true. So it wasn't a challenge against truth and false. It was a
Right.
challenge as in how I was receiving it and how I was allowing it to move my life in a positive direction. Because
Mm.
that's a desire of my heart. I want my life to move in a positive direction, not just for me, but for all the people around me. And to do that, and if I'm going to say I'm the church, that's the kind of response I want people to have when they're around me.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was going back to the beginning, studying out, and then allowing myself to make the changes because I didn't
Mm.
realize how religious, for lack of a better word, I was in tradition, that I couldn't have a real experience with the Spirit of God so that I could be in this world in a kind, loving, generous, merciful way.
Mm.
And sometimes that tradition or religiosity gets in the way of being the church the way God designed it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
where I'm
No.
at right now.
Yeah. No, I love all that and I can relate to it. I wouldn't necessarily use some of the words that you've chose, but
Yeah.
like I feel like I've had like I wouldn't necessarily say I'm the church, but I do feel like I'm having the experience of holding and honoring and carrying myself in a way that's different and maybe more mindful or maybe you know what I mean? I feel like it's kind of in alignment with what you're talking about. Um, and also like maybe for folks who like for me the recovery process
Mm.
getting sober really has a kind of a format. They do an inventory process where you kind of just look and you find out what's good, what's bad, that sort of thing. But I think the thing that's really helpful and something that I find myself challenged by, I think I've said this before that I often feel like God fails me. And it's not
Mm.
God that fails me, but it's my understanding. And so oftentimes there's points in my life where something that I believed so wholeheartedly, I come to see differently.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes that can feel so contrary to what I thought I knew that it makes me want to like just throw it all out, you know,
Mm.
instead of really trying to figure out I think we just having to kind of like look at it a little bit, explore it a little bit more. Like, is this thought, is this idea, is this way of hearing something that I've learned, is it suiting? Is it helping me? Or could it help me more? Like, is there more from it that I can get from it? That's what I heard a lot from what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have and I'm asking because I'm curious, do you have a standard of what you hold to, so things that you value? Like there's a lot of stuff out in the world. A lot of things that may momentarily make me feel okay, but in the long run is hurtful to me. And so I don't want to have those in my network of things that I grab on when I get
Yeah.
under the fire or when I'm looking for peace or whatever. So I just wonder because I use my Bible obviously because I'm a Christian, but what tools do you use outside of the Word of
Mhm.
God for that, if any?
Yeah. Well, it kind of depends, like there are sometimes I'll come across things on YouTube that other people are sharing or talking about. I really love Maya Angelou and her work and what she's talked about. I kind of get it a lot of different places, but I think there was something that was coming up when you were bringing up this question. Um, I think the thing for me sometimes isn't always about there is this idea of seeking something outside to kind of inspire
Hmm.
me or help me understand myself. But I think sometimes I need to be able to look at what it is that I'm doing and
Hmm.
ask why. And to try to do it in a way that is not judgmental. Because I feel like that's what's been a lot of my experience where maybe maybe I'll do something. Like there was a time when like drug use was good for me at one point in time. Um, and I know that might sound controversial or whatever, but I do feel like it was the best thing I could do for me at that time. It eventually became not good for me, and I had to be aware that this thing isn't working for me or isn't helpful or I've grown beyond it or whatever. So I think that's some of the things is that I could have very easily um, just said that that was bad, that was wrong, and lived with shame and lived with the difficulty and still did it. I don't think it was morally wrong. Uh, I believe that God put it in my life to help me uh, get through life and surround it. And it was a way that it was interesting because I wasn't allowed to. People like me. I was told I'm not supposed to say that, but people like me. Um, where can we go when we're told we can't go to church? We're told we can't go to the Bible. We're told we can't. You
Who
know what I
told
mean?
you
So,
that? That's what I
well,
want to know. Who told you that?
well, there's a lot of people who say that,
See, they don't get to say.
and sometimes it's the unsaidness. Like I know for me, I never once heard growing up that trans people or gay people or whatever were going to hell or were wrong but I wasn't ever told that we existed. And that was the problem. That was the challenge for me because I didn't see myself in the Bible, because the Bible and the way that it was taught to me or the churches that we're in didn't help show me who I was with God or through God. I had to go find that elsewhere. Um,
Have you ever asked yourself why?
well,
And
the
we're talking 44 years ago, or 40, let's
mhm.
say 38 years ago. I think that culturally things were different then. And so things that they were trying to help people relate to were different. And I think
Well,
there's a lot of reason, because I know, I mean, just knowing from, this is my perspective, I hope you don't mind,
no.
from where we grew up in that little tiny town in Idaho, there weren't a whole lot of people, that there were not a whole lot of different kinds of people there. I
Right.
mean, I
Well,
think about
we
it.
all had to leave. We all left. Yeah, I mean, if you were a person of, you know what I mean? Like, if you were just not like everyone else there, you would leave. So that I think that was part of the thing. It wasn't, I don't think that anyone was like trying to, um, we're like, shh, don't talk about that.
Well, yeah,
It's
okay.
more of
I was
just
like,
like,
I
I
don't think
think,
they even knew, but I was, you know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, part of it again, and gay, trans, queer people have been around for forever, and we've been in religious spaces and all that sort of stuff. But there is kind of like there was like this invisibility or this inability to talk about it. And I think part of it too is just because I had no perception when I
Mhm.
heard, because I can hear the same words today, and I can hear, oh, that's it, that sounds like that reminds me of my trans experience or my queer experience or this, that, or the other. Like I can see myself in the Bible um, today, in the same stories, and I can see my friends in the Bible that I had never saw in there before because I have a different perspective that I didn't have when I was younger and wasn't given to me either in those spaces because they didn't talk about it in that language or in those ways. I didn't have the ability. to see beyond my own experience and my own experience that didn't look like if my experience didn't look like everyone else around me, which is true for all of us to some degree. But I think when you're outside of that heteronormative, like if you're just kind of outside of the, yeah, it's hard to explain. Yes, I do think that it's different now. And yes, I do think that there are a lot of churches and a lot of spaces where trans and queer folks can feel better in. My question is still why. Like I've gotten so much life and I've experienced God so much outside of those places that sometimes it's like, but why try? Because there still are a lot of those places, and there's a lot of those people who seem to have the mics, seem to have the megaphones, who are saying everything opposite. Um, and yes, I can do the gymnastics and I can like, no, 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 no for me, but it's still kind of, I don't know, that's where I go with it. Yes, I think I can see me and I can hear me and all that sort of stuff. But at that time, I wasn't able to do that. And because I wasn't able to do that, I had to kind of go somewhere else. So I think if church wants to do a better job, if religion or spiritual spaces want to do a better job, they have to help us and recognize us when we're smaller, when we're younger. Like we need to be in communities that are more reflective of the people that we can become or who we are, I think, wherever possible.
I'm tracking with you, and I just
Okay.
want you to know that I am the church,
Yeah,
and then I love you,
I
and
know.
I want to be a place for people who are looking for love can experience it.
Hmm.
And so I'm not a religious person. I'm
Yeah.
not even what you would call a spiritual person. I'm a person who loves Jesus and who wants to share that with the world around me. Um, so I'm excited to see what this new beginning for me
Hmm.
is going to move me towards because,
Have you noticed anything specific that you could share
well,
or
yeah,
that you'd want to share?
sure, it's just a desire in my heart. See, each season I think changes us, not only maybe physically, sometimes not physically, but spiritually it changes us. And I do believe that there's a physical man and a spiritual man. I do believe they battle one another because they both want to be the boss. But I would much rather not look perfect on the outside and be a good person on the inside. So
Hmm.
my goal is to work on the inside man. And for me, the inside man and that change is very important. And I have had an inside change.
Hmm.
There is a new fire in my heart. There is a new desire to love people and to be around people and to tell them that they're amazing. I have a new desire for that. And
Hmm.
it's funny, and I'm going to just throw this in there because I'm going to. Um, I actually had to go to the physical doctor yesterday, which I don't
Oh.
like to go
Hmm.
to. So it was a telecall, and then they decided that no, I need to see you in person because we haven't seen you in a while.
Hmm.
And it was funny because when I went in there, I had everybody there was like, "Oh my gosh, could you come and visit us every single day?"
Hmm.
Because the change in my spirit was infectious, and I couldn't stop smiling. I couldn't stop being kind to these people. It's in the afternoons. Someone was yelling at someone because their insurance was messed up. Someone else was blah blah blah. I was a walk-in because they changed me all of a sudden. It was just a different encounter. I got in to see my
Hmm.
doctor, and my doctor had marked all the boxes. She's like, "Oh my gosh, why are you here?" I go, "That's my question. Why am I here?" I said, "You guys dismissed me and wanted to check my weight." And he started laughing. And he said, "So how do you feel?" I go, "You know what? I feel better today than I have in 10 years."
Mm.
So I believe that my physical shift that
Right.
I've had when I've gone back to the beginning to lift up some of this baggage, I don't know how else to describe it, to lift some of this baggage off. You know, I I am ruthless to myself in my mind. You're like, what are you
Mm,
accomplishing? What are you doing? You're like this age, and what do you have to say for it? Why aren't you out doing this or that? Why aren't you doing this? This other person in
mm,
your age group is doing this. Whatever. Your hair's stupid. It's too long. It's too short. You're too fat. You're too skinny. You eat too much. Whatever. All these things that
mhm.
I just throw on myself. And where I
Yeah,
had to stop and say, you know what? Who am I? Who am I really? And so when I went back to the beginning to see, okay, I know that I'm the church. I believe that. I believed that before when all the crazy.
right.
So what does it look like really? It doesn't look like a lot of rules. It doesn't look like a lot of religiosity. I don't want to live like that.
Yeah,
So when I went back, I felt this such a freeing in my spirit that I believe had a tangible impact when I went to the doctor yesterday.
yeah. But
And
would you
go
say, because I feel like that's always been the desire of your heart, would you
yeah,
just feel like you're able to do it? You're able, I don't want to say maybe better, but like you're having the ability to do it either
yeah.
more fully or differently or more broadly. It does sound like you're having a more expansive experience of it.
Huh. Well, so I've always been an outgoing and kind of a bold person. You know that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But there's a difference between being outgoing and bold in the standards of what the world expects expectation.
Yeah.
I'm come from the business world. I'm very driven. I'm very motivated. I set goals and I go after them. Well, I don't have that in my life anymore.
Mm,
So what does that look like? So I had to look at something different. So in the past, I would okay, how much money do I want to make? What kind of car do I want? You know how all the corporate things they try to get you to go, so you go out there and you're doing your thing. So what does that look like for me as a woman of faith who doesn't have a tangible job? What does that look like for me, and how does that equate to me being the church? So when I went back and I looked, I realized all the things that I had in the business world, I need to allow God to transform so that it can be used in this new season. So my
mhm,
boldness, I need to be bold not because of this great product or this great company or this great whatever. I need to be bold for the love and the kindness and the mercy and the grace that God has put in me. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
So I need to transform that from the world's perspective into the perspective that is not about so much me.
Yeah.
And what I have found so far is that the world receives me pretty well and they don't
Mhm,
find me as abrasive. I'm still bold. I'm still outgoing. I still probably say stuff that maybe I maybe shouldn't say, but the reception of the world around me is different, and it can
mhm,
receive me different because of the position that I'm coming from of love and mercy and grace. Now I don't get it right every time. I still have that crazy bold woman that's motivated and driven that
mhm.
rears its head, but I'm in transition and I'm just
Yeah.
learning. But I feel it in my spirit and I feel it in my life. And had I not gone back to allow it to be redefined in me, to allow me to reassess, who I am and what I want out of life and what I think God wants, like, and what my purpose is, you
Mhm.
know? Anyway, sorry,
No,
long way around.
no, not no anyway. No, I mean, that all makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, I really resonate with that. And I feel like that's a similar experience that I've been having, um, with my life as well too. I appreciate that you are, and I don't, and maybe it's because of age, but like you are ahead of me in some of these areas. So it's really, I get a lot of strength and uh, affirmation and comfort um, with when my journey of going backwards um, seems like it's similar to what yours was or is, um, that I can get again, I can just feel seen, affirmed, and also I feel like I can be open to what your experience is. And oftentimes it's not about telling me what I should do, but it's more of just sharing what your experience is with going through that. And oftentimes, I think the helpful part for me is when you're able to affirm that you're you weren't good at it, or how hard it was, or that you didn't want to but you did but you didn't, or you know what I mean. Like I feel like
Yeah.
some of those more thought to be negative or like experiences, like the
Yeah.
experiences we're not supposed to have. Um, that which I know you know what I mean, because I
Yeah.
think we
Yeah.
both come from that same cloth
Yep.
or whatever.
Yep.
So for me, I really identify with that. And then when I can identify with that problem, if you will, then I can be more open to what your solution is. And my solution is my solution because I'm different. However, I can apply or hear some of your
Yeah.
story and mine that can help me kind of lean more into finding out those parts for myself that are uniquely mine,
Right.
to kind of again move forward with, rather than kind of getting stuck in the backwards. And
Yeah.
I think that could be the tough part. How do you what kind of thoughts or suggestions would you have for folks about how do they how do you go backwards but not get stuck in that backwards? Like, how do you
Mm.
I feel like at times, I feel like I've, like, wallowed in that stuff so much that I
Yeah.
just want it off. It's like, how do you really move forward? Do you have any suggestions?
You know, I've been backwards to go forwards a few times in my life. And what I've realized is if I will determine what it is I'm looking for, because I found there was a lot of times in my life I didn't even know what I wanted. I didn't even know what I was looking for. And so it's like, okay, what is it that I'm looking for? So that was a question I asked myself. And then the next question would be, have I ever had it?
Mm,
And if I've had it and I've experienced it, I found that usually I had because that's why I desire it so much. Now, if
mm,
I had found that I was just desiring it because someone else had it, I told myself I didn't want it. Because you know why? Because I'm different. We're
mm,
all different. We're all uniquely and wonderfully made. So I don't want the same experience as someone else's experience, no matter how wonderful they say it is and how much I enjoy being around and having them share their experience.
mm,
So then I would halt at that point. But once I was able to integrate, what is it I want? Have I had this experience? My next question would be, what was my life like then?
mm,
And so then I would look at that and say, okay, what decisions or what opportunities or what things did I do potentially? Because I'm the only one I can control. I can't control what anyone else did that I did. How did I receive, whatever that looks like, that took me away from that space. Now, we don't want to live in that negative moment or that positive
right.
moment. Hopefully, you're pursuing something positive. When you go back, I would suggest that you pursue the positive because that'll eliminate the negative. And then I went
Mm,
back and I said, okay, how can I come back to this place where I had this whatever it was. For me, a lot of times my first time was joy. I didn't have any joy in my life. I couldn't figure out
yeah.
why. And I'm like, okay, what is it that brought me joy in this moment? What was it that brought that to me? And then what's changed? So have those people left my life? Have I gotten offended? Have I made some decisions that moved me out of that space? So I just kind of start there and then I evaluate. Now I know that I'm never going to have this exact moment again because it's not meant to happen again. But
Right.
what I'm looking for is, for me anyway, is that the spiritual um, peace that came from it.
Yeah.
Like I said, that first one for me was joy. I don't want to be in a life that I hate. I want to experience not happiness because I can be happy with a birthday cake and my girlfriend.
Right.
I want to be joyful. I want to have genuine, heartfelt joy so that when I smile at someone, it's
Right.
infectious.
Well, and joy is a release. I think it's more of a release than it is
Yeah.
like a something we receive. You know what I mean? It's about a letting out.
It's a
So would
positive release.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a sigh. Um,
Did that answer your question?
yeah. Whereas maybe like happiness is the intake of the air.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
joy is like the
That's a good way
release.
to put it out.
But
Yeah,
I
that's a
also,
great way.
um, and so what I'm hearing and what you said is one is like when going backwards to be intentional about where it is you're going backwards and what it is that you are looking for.
Yeah.
Would you say that's what keeps you from maybe getting stuck in that spot?
Yeah, because and always make it a positive. That's probably something you should put in
So
there.
kind
Always
of
make
like so if you are going to say the dark or the difficult spots, go back there looking for the light. Go back
Yeah,
there looking for the growth or the healing or whatever,
yeah,
not the pain or the darkness itself.
One thing I've realized over time is it's really easy to be miserable. It's much harder to be happy and joyful.
Yes, and I think yes and no. I think that's the
Really?
lie. Well, I think so in recovery they have when you start to like and they talking around abstinence, but I think it's this idea of living a spiritual way of life, which often sometimes feels because you have to like let go of this and you have to change this and you have to have a little bit more discipline and structure. But they say this is the easier, softer way. And so I feel like to some degree, um, like when you said it's easier to be miserable, I don't know if that's the truth. I
Hmm.
think maybe the easier, softer way is actually to be seeking joy. And you know what I mean? Like kind of the opposite of that is actually the
Hmm.
easier, softer way, though we feel because being miserable and all that comes with its own, like even more struggle and more solution because struggle, solution, like life happens anyway. And so we can either show up for it with joy or we can show it up with misery. And joy isn't going to make it more difficult, but misery will, right? So I think that's the thought.
So there we have it. Same conversation, two different perspectives.
Yeah,
And
but
that's why
mine is the correct one. I'm just joking.
that's why it's important that we go back to the beginning, you see?
Totally, yeah.
Because when we go through with one perspective, we get one outcome. And sometimes if we're not where we want to be, we have to go back to the beginning and regain some new perspective.
Hmm.
So in a
Yeah,
nutshell. And
yeah.
so I was just, as you're talking, and I was like, here's two people. We're only, I don't know, 10 years apart, maybe
8.
12.
I
No,
think 8.
no, like
I'm
12.
44.
I'm 56.
Damn.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Anyway, I don't mind being a senior. I get discounts everywhere.
Right,
Just saying.
right.
Anyway, so we had two people grew up in a very similar environment,
Hmm.
um, definitely similar geographics, had different experiences because they were 10 years apart. So I had a little bit different high school and school experience
Right.
than you
The
did,
fashion was completely
but
different.
so different. It's although
Right.
it's coming back right now. Anyway, so but we both left
Mm,
and we left for different reasons. But here's what I want to say. We both left, we both went on different journeys. We both come back around and because I read my Bible and because I'm a Christian woman, I'm going to share. I read in the Bible, one of my favorite characters for the longest time was Abraham.
mm,
And the Holy Spirit said, you are so blessed, Tina. You are so blessed, Bonnie, because Abraham never got to go home.
mm,
He left and he didn't get to return. So we
mm,
both got to leave. We both get to have our own experience. We both are in pursuit, but both of us get to go home. Now you've
mhm.
gone home physically right now, and you're ready
I'm
to
closer
walk
to home.
closer to home. You're
Yeah.
you're at least in the same state.
Yes.
Um, and I've gone home spiritually but I travel back and forth on the regular as much as I can.
Hmm.
So we're still again having the same strength. But here's the thing: I think you and I have some of the same character traits. We're
Totally.
both we're both bold, we're both outgoing, we're both very driven. We both have a desire to help and serve the people around us. So I just love the fact that you and I, and although we had to take a 20-year sabbatical while we were out there figuring out life, we're able
Hmm.
to come back together and embrace our differences, allow one another to be who we are and not try to change one another,
Right.
but still encourage and empower one another and have the ability to speak life into one another.
Yeah.
This is new perspective. So we were able to come back by choice because we didn't just run into one another at the airport. We chose
No. Yeah.
to come back to the beginning. And I know it wasn't a true beginning back to, the womb, but it was a
Yeah.
beginning.
Hmm.
So we're coming back to a beginning of relationship and we're going to allow it to take on something different. And we've had our little quirky things
Yeah.
over the time we've been together. So it's just amazing to me how God can take people in the same family, because I think family is important and it's purposeful, to take us on two different journeys and bring us back here and still have two different perspectives when we go
Hmm.
back to a similar beginning. I just think that's
Yeah.
amazing. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
It
It's super.
reminds me again that There's a higher power in this universe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that is a great way to end it. And then we're right at the 45-minute mark, which is when we typically want to end. So thank you so much for this conversation. I'm so glad that you suggested it. It's
Yeah.
super relevant for me right now, and sounds like for you as well. And
Yep.
hopefully,
Yep.
hopefully for folks who come across this podcast, either you're with us live or you're listening or watching later. We always love that you join us. We also love to hear from you. So please, you know,
Yes.
put something in the comments or direct message us from the links in the description. Um, and join us next week, same time, same place, or in the next episode. Have a great week, everyone. Bye,
See you
Tina.
guys. Enjoy your week. Bye, Bonnie.
Love you so much, Tina.
I love you too.
Splintered Grace Podcast is brought to you by a queer chaplain. Follow us on all of our social medias, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at The Queer Chaplain. Listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. Feel free to tip us at Venmo, Bonnie Violet, and support monthly on Patreon. The song is original by Stephen Sandknopp, The Chasm Between Us. Rest in peace, Stephen.